for nearly every situation where I had a child who was the victim of some kind of abuse online was that the parent did not know what was going on. They and parents, and I'm a parent, I have two boys, 16 and 18. We're the first generation of parents who didn't grow up in a world with social media. So we're way behind the power curve. We don't have all day like our kids do to mess with the social media. So we're always kind of behind the power curve. So what I want to do is I want to give parents the tools and the resources so that they can be as hands-on and as effective as they possibly can. And that led me to writing a book called Parenting the Digital World, and my seminars. Yeah, in the background, and my seminars where I speak at schools. It's free for parents to attend, and get you going on the right path. And so I have a website, cybersafetycop.com, and people contact me through that website all the time, and friends who call me, and I've noticed an uptick in adults using social media to create relationships with minors, with children. And right now, and this makes sense because our kids are on social media and probably not overly supervised the vast majority of the day now. So they're not even in a classroom, but in their bedrooms. Yeah. So TikTok, if you don't know, is by far the most exciting social media platform for kids. And it's got the fastest user growth. It's got a faster user growth than Instagram or Snapchat. And it's really designed to kind of capture a child's desire to be loved and accepted. So what you need to understand is like how predators manipulate children. It's based on the very simple fact, and this is true for all human beings, but especially children. They want to be loved and they want to be accepted. And they don't have a sense that the person talking to them through their phone or social media is a danger to them because they're not right there. Yeah. So the interaction that's happening there, although they know that if they were face to face with an adult stranger, like that's not safe, but since it's happening on a phone, it just feels different to them. It doesn't feel the same. However, the consequences are the same. So I've had multiple families reaching out to me because they're typically boys and girls are both victimized. Girls are victimized probably 2 to 3 times more often than boys are. And what we have is adult men paying young girls to make videos for them or to chat with them, live video chat with them. And a lot of times they're finding them on TikTok. So they find a cute girl or girl that they think they can message and manipulate. They find them on TikTok, and then they get them onto FaceTime or some other platform. And they'll say, like in their TikTok video, they're singing or they're playing an instrument, like, oh, you're so talented. I'll Venmo you $5 if you do make a video of you singing and send it to me. And so the kid's like, well, $5 and I'm not doing anything wrong. This seems perfectly fine. So they start doing that. And so the money's rolling in. And if you don't know, Venmo is this, it's a money sharing app. So you can send people money. It draws money from your bank account. It sends it to them. But if as a bank account, all you need is a Venmo. You can use Venmo.
Yeah. I think we're having technology difficulties with Clay.
He's getting money. Parents don't know. Become more dangerous, more extreme. They want them to, remove clothing, and then it can get explicit. So
Clay, just for a second, you froze up for a little bit for us, so I just want to make sure people heard that Venmo is this app. If you don't know what it is, and if you do know what it is, these kids can collect money on Venmo and spend from Venmo. So people will never know that they have money that they can spend. That won't show up in a bank account. The parent won't know that they have money at their disposal and using it for things online.
Yeah, Venmo is a really convenient kind of slush fund. Like you can just have it sitting in there, and then you can Venmo other people, and you can transfer money back and forth. It's real money. It's sitting in there. You can have it deposit into a bank account, but if you want it completely, like off the books, you can just keep it on Venmo.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that going on right now, and usually the people call those guys sugar daddies that are doing this. So if you hear like TikTok sugar daddy or something like that, that's typically what people are talking about.
Like it's a known, like they know that I have a sugar daddy on TikTok. He gives me money and I play guitar or something like that. But it could quickly escalate into something much worse.
Yes, absolutely. And then probably the other thing that parents are struggling with is well, obviously, the more time your kid spends online, the more exposed they are to predator behavior and bullying. So although kids aren't at school right now, there's a lot of bullying happening online, and the kids call it drama. They're like, "Hey, it's just drama. Don't worry about it." But it's very pervasive. It's happening all the time. And lastly, probably screen time. So parents are struggling with the situation where they're like, well, if my kid can't go outside and hang out with friends, they're hanging out with their friends inside, and they're using screens to do that. And so there is a bit of a trade-off there. And I understand it because I have a 16 and 18-year-old. So they are absolutely on screens more often than they were when school was in session. So what I would say for parents in that is maybe loosen, if you had a hard 2 hours a day for screen time for your child, maybe, we probably need to loosen that a little bit. But what I would encourage parents to do is have your kid, or have priorities set for your child, which would be studying, chores, and other things before they have kind of that, screen time with friends. So just so that they, they're not waking up at 6 a.m. and just on screens all day. So they should get those other things done, and then they should have some screen time. And then, maybe take your kid on a hike or a walk.
What are some things that parents can do to make sure that the kids, that they're not meeting a sugar daddy? What is some things, some controls or some best practices?
Right. So my book, I walk through all the parental controls, all the safety things you need to do on their device, because the only way you're going to know is if you're actually in the loop somehow. And so one way is to, number one, you should know what apps your child's using. If you don't want your child to be using an app like, maybe you don't want your child to have TikTok, then you should be.
I want my child to have TikTok.
Right. My boys don't have it. I have my 16, 18-year-old do not have TikTok. You can block their ability to download it because you need to turn on parental controls on the App Store, so that you have to approve those apps. And those kinds of things we can do on parental control. But if it's content that you're concerned about, an app like Bark is an app that you install on your child's device, and it runs in the background, and it's looking for problems. It's looking for words and things that might indicate you have some questionable behavior happening. Yeah. And I think we have a link on that with a promo code as well. And that's an app that I've been advocating for the last few years. I use it with my boys' devices, and it works really well.
Yeah, we have that as resources at the end for any of these things that we're talking about. And then there's a question in here, and I think I get it. So the question is, I've heard recently that people are hacking into Zoom calls and Google Drive folders. I heard from our friend Sandy Morgan that they're hacking into Google Classroom even, and talking to children. How can we protect them in those apps that we can't necessarily block if they're using them for school?
Right. So Zoom was having a lot of problems because people were basically they were kind of guessing what the Zoom links were. There was no password. The other thing too is that often when that was happening, the people were sharing the Zoom link on social media. Mm-hmm. So number one, you shouldn't share your Zoom link and invitation on social media unless you want anybody to be there. And number two, Zoom just a few weeks ago updated their app with new security settings and recommendations. So I just wrote an article about this, and it's on my website. It's called Zoom. The article is called Zoom Bombing: What Parents Need to Know, and what parents and educators need to know. So if you want, Megan, if you want to, dig a little bit deeper on that, go to my website, read that article, but I would update Zoom. I would use the password, and Zoom now has new options like the waiting room where you can vet people before you let them in. And those kind of simple things will make that app much simpler. And the other thing too is use hard passwords. Do not use simple passwords. Do not use the same password for everything. And that's how people are getting their emails. Their emails are getting hacked. Their Google Drives are getting hacked because they're using the same password for everything. And once that gets exposed, then everything's open to bad guys.
Yeah, so Zoom bombing for today's taking on two different looks. One is the happy hour with your friends, and you have 3 successive Zoom happy hours. You're going to get Zoom bombed one way or the other. That I've had some friends talk about that. And then the Google Classroom though is challenging because that's where a lot of the kids, like I know our school district is using Google Classrooms as the primary vehicle for information, and Google is not famous for protecting your information. And once you buy into Google, it's everything you got. So have you heard anything about how to protect on Google other than making sure you go in, and the default settings make it easy, but you have the chance to go into the settings and make it tougher? Is there something else?
Yeah, that's kind of it. I agree with you about Google. It's kind of ubiquitous, right? Like most schools are using it, and it's simple to use and it's free. So that's why schools like it. But it's not nearly secure as like WebEx. Zoom has gotten better, so I would put Zoom up there with WebEx. But those types of platforms typically are a bit more security robust than Google.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do know that the other problem that was happening with Zoom was that it wasn't encrypting, and so your data was going, who knows, was getting intercepted. So not only could people come in and,
Right.
try and do something crazy to your presentation, but they were also gathering your data. So I'm noticing now, Zoom has been really responsive to this. They have a little encrypted signal on my screen, so we should be safe. All of your questions are safe here. By the way, we are recording this, so anybody, if you have a question. Before we move on to Pam, what final words would you like to have for our parents for online safety before we talk about the schools?
I guess my final one would be, don't be afraid to dig in. And when I do my presentations, I sometimes have grandparents in my audience that maybe inherited grandchildren that they're now raising.
Oh yeah.
And if they can do it, you can do it. I know it seems overwhelming. You're like, I already have a full-time job. This sounds like another full-time job. There are ways you can do it. I tried to do all the legwork for you. And the other thing too is, I like to give parents permission to invade their child's privacy, as much as you think you need to. So there should be no place in your child's life as a parent. If you want to stick your nose in there, I think you should. If you're seeing red flags and you have concerns, then you absolutely should be able to have access to all those things. And so you should know passwords, you should know usernames and passwords.
Yeah, you should also be on the lookout for second accounts.
Yes.
So I had a friend whose daughter had the Facebook or whatever Instagram account that her parents knew, and they were diligent about checking it, and everything was always great because she had a ghost account.
Yeah.
Where she was doing all of the things that they were horrified.
Take your child's phone, open up their Instagram account, app,
mm-hmm.
and at the top there's a username. Tap on that username, and if they have more than one account logged onto that app, because you can have up to 5 logged in simultaneously, a little tray will slide up with all the accounts listed.
Mm-hmm.
So you might be surprised if you think your child has one account, you tap on that username, it slides up with 5 accounts or 3 accounts, whatever. There may be more accounts on there than you're aware. So take your kid's phone every night. It should be plugged in and charging in your room at night. And those are opportunities for you to kind of, trust but verify is I think a good idea.
And that's the when I first worked with you, what you said is technology and screens are a part of our kids' lives. We don't want to overreact and say you get nothing, because you actually probably run the risk of pushing them farther away. They're going to use their friends, they're going to use their friends' technology, and then you have no control over it. So cooperating with the inevitable, knowing your kids have technology and screens in front of them, how do you do that most safely? So
yeah, technology is amazing. They just need a little bit of help navigating it safely.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much, Clay. And now we're going to turn it over to Pam, who represents the Capistrano Unified School District. And she is going to talk to us about what the schools are doing and how to talk to your kids if you think there's anything of concern. So go ahead and take it away, my friend Pam.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me, Brenda. I think just a couple of things, I'll echo what Clay said, what we've been talking about. And Brenda, you just mentioned it. This now in this day and age, my background's in child development. In this day and age, the digital piece, the tech piece, that is a part of our children's development. So it is here. It's not going away. Like you say, if we restrict it, kids are going to find a way. They always do. So it's best to educate yourself and to be, to know what they're doing, what they're involved with, who their friends are. I know it can be very overwhelming. It can be a little scary. I was reading somewhere that, this is the first generation of parents having to deal with these kinds of issues. I certainly didn't have to deal with it with my children when they were being raised. So it is a different world. But Clay said this, what you can do, you really do need to be media savvy. You need to educate yourself. It's a lot to learn. The learning curve is high, but you do need to educate yourself. And a couple of reasons for doing that, not only because of your children's safety, but also being able to talk to them about it. So you have knowledge and you can actually speak their language and use the same terminology. And that's important when you're talking with your children. And then understanding that with this is so media, the technology, the social media, it's so absolutely fascinating for children because they have the desire, they get to a certain age and they more and more want to connect with their peers. It's very important to connect with your peers and to be a part of that peer group. And so social media is primarily, I think, how kids do that now.
And it's one of those things that they have that they're using it to validate their self-worth.
Absolutely.
Kids have always needed it, but now they have this additional verifier.
Right.
That is, causing some issues.
Right. And then one thing that Clay mentioned that I will go back to just a little bit, I don't want to jump around too much, but the thing about the online, and we're finding this in the research and is coming out, articles are coming out about everybody is online more right now, the children, the parents, the teachers. And what's happening is there's a lot of screen fatigue going on.
Yeah.
And it's more exhausting. It takes a lot of energy to be online and to be looking at a screen all day long. And so part of that reason is because when you're in a face-to-face situation, either one-on-one or in a small group or a large group, you're picking up on all the nonverbal cues in the room. Wherever you are. And our brain automatically does that. But when you're online and you're in Google or Zoom, your brain is searching for all those nonverbal cues. That's part of our, how we communicate. That's part of how we receive information and communication. And so our brains have to work extra hard. They're looking for those nonverbal cues and they're not there. So that's why we're getting the fatigue. So the same thing with kids, when you said, Clay, that kids are, when someone's connecting with them online, and it's kind of anonymous, right? because you maybe don't see that person, but also if you do see them, you're not getting all those nonverbal cues that we normally get. So there's a part of how we're developed and what we use to receive information that maybe we're not picking up on some of those cues that we would if we were with that same person face to face. So
yeah, we've already seen how, even as adults, screen time seems to eliminate a bunch of filters.
It absolutely does.
And we say things that we would never say if that person was right there. And so I think that kids are saying things like the bullying that that Clay mentioned, as well as the response and what we'd agree to, because it doesn't seem like there's a person on the other end of that request. Right. I'm just doing this to this inanimate screen. I think the connection to that, and there's actually a person at the other end there that is getting lost.
Right. And so part of that, some of that too, is in terms of like the safety, is like those intuitions that we have. Mm-hmm. You know, we're built with, we have intuitive intelligence. And so a lot of that we're not being able to use if we're doing having these relationships online. So that is a problem. Things that are studies and more information and evidence is coming out more and more about that. But also, you know, just understanding that the kids want to connect. This is a fascinating way for them to connect. It's fast, it's exciting, it's new. They can express themselves in different ways. And then the other thing for parents, I think, is also be able to understand, you know, where they are developmentally. It's different for different ages. For the younger kids versus the older kids. The younger kids are obviously going to need more guidance, but the older kids too are going to, and everybody's going to need more, honestly, more supervision. And I absolutely agree with Clay. If you have a question about what's going on, and you are worried about invading the privacy, if there's a real safety issue involved, you absolutely need to get involved. Because the safety of our children is foremost.
I wanted to ask you about, as teachers, as mandated reporters, and a lot of the things that are happening at school that the parents or the teachers can see and they know who to report to. What happens when the kids are at home and those mandated reporters aren't having a chance to observe things? Or maybe you see your child's friend, you know, so like, what would that look like? How would you talk to the kids, or how would the school support them in that?
Well, I think it's they're similar to when we are in school, when we are in brick and mortar buildings. Sometimes kids will come to a teacher and that they feel comfortable with, or a trusted adult, and let them know. Sometimes they may be concerned about a friend and they will say something to the teacher. Mm-hmm. Yes, we are having a lot of group formats right now, but there's also individual sessions as well in small group. Either kids are reporting, or maybe a friend or a parent will say something. And so absolutely, the teacher is a mandated reporter, and so they will need to report that to their administration, and then they follow the proper steps.
And what can they do if, when they get, because there's what makes it really unusual, is that if a mandated reporter, like, you know, in one of these classroom settings, a virtual classroom setting, a teacher sees something that concerns them or hears something from a student, they report, you know, appropriately to whatever school thing. Can the school then go to the house in question? Like, how can they engage with the kid or the family?
Well, it depends. I mean, each circumstance, each situation is unique. And so it really depends. And what the teacher can do is, and a lot of where we are in situations one-on-one with the student, like in a screen individual session, say, there will be other staff on campus. Mm-hmm. So it's typically you would be on campus still. Well, a lot of us are in our offices and we're working on campus. So we still have staff. And so same kind of procedure prevails, is if we have a concern, we would go and talk to our administrator, talk to whoever is on duty at the time, and then we would proceed accordingly.
So we have a question. The question is, who is the direct service provider in this Capistrano area to serve these minors who are engaging in online sexual activity, exploitation, and how are the faculty and staff trained? So do you know anything about that?
Okay, I'm not sure I understand the first part of the question.
So who in the Capistrano school area is serving who's engaging with minors who are sexually exploited online? And Clay might know the answer to this question because he's in law enforcement. So if you do, you can come off mute.
Who's engaging with the minors? Well, I mean, you have your school resources. We have counselors on every campus, school psychologists. So you have mental health professionals that are responding. And then what was the second part of the question?
How are the faculty and staff trained to identify online or sexual exploitation?
Yeah, there's a lot of training at the very beginning of the school year, every school year. We go through training, all of us who are mental health professionals working in the school sites, we go through training. We have preparedness training. We have the safety officers come in, the sheriff's department come in, and we get trained on that. And then there's ongoing training throughout the school year. A lot of us have been doing a lot of trainings right now on a lot of these issues. And there are trainings upcoming because of some of these issues that are coming up with the kids being online so much, being, doing their school now online. A lot of this is in the forefront. And so we have ongoing trainings.
Do you know what the protocol would be? Let's just say a teacher right now, and again, this might be law enforcement kind of crossover, but a teacher says, I have a feeling that my student has a TikTok sugar daddy. What am I supposed to do? Maybe it's not my friend, maybe it's my daughter's friend or something. What am I supposed to do when I figure that out?
So I think actually is probably more law enforcement. However, in the school setting, if there is a concern, so usually what will happen, and Clay, you can chime in if you need to, but usually what will happen is, if it's gotten to that point with a child, with a student, then you will see other changes. You'll see changes in behavior. So you may see there's a lot of red flags. You may see just changes in daily routine, changes in sleep habits, changing in eating habits, withdrawal, isolation. You may see grades go down. So you're going to see other red flags as well. So those are the things that the school can get involved in when you see those changes in that behavior. If it is a criminal activity, then that goes to the law enforcement.
Yeah, I'll just really quick say that if you suspect someone's grooming your child or some other child, then you need to contact your local law enforcement. And so unless you're in a city like Irvine, which has its own police department, if it's the Orange County Sheriff's Department, you'd call the Sheriff's Department's non-emergency line, and then you would have a police officer, a deputy sheriff. Currently, they're trying to do everything over the phone. So you'd probably have one call you and take that report over the phone. That initial report then goes to the sex crimes unit, and then an investigator will pick it up. But it was when I was a school resource officer, those kinds of things would happen, and I get called into the principal's office, and the principal would be sitting there with a student and a parent, and they're like, "Hey, Deputy Cranford, this is what's going on." So it was nice to be able to be on campus with students and have that kind of interaction with them, because there is a not seeing a kid in the behaviors that you're talking about. You're really kind of relying on parents or the student to notify that there's an issue. But I would see kids walking around, and I'd say, "Hey, what's going on with you today? You just don't seem yourself," and teachers have that opportunity. And so that's a little bit lost right now, unfortunately, the human interaction piece.
Here's another question I think is related to your answer then. So what community-based organizations does either the school or, I think this is for you, Pam, or the school districts, partner with to refer young families and youth for additional resources? So I imagine something like the Boys and Girls Club or the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force. I guess it depends on but who do you partner with?
Well, actually, I don't think it's a partnership. It's actually an affiliate. It's more than that. We're actually under Orange County Department of Ed. And so there are great resources. If you haven't been on the Orange County Department of Ed website, I encourage you to do that, parents. They have great resources, and specifically for these topics, they have, it spans the gamut from how to talk to kids from age 5 to 7 up to young adult 14 through 17. So it's how to talk to kids, what to look for. There's a website that they, in fact, I was looking at this morning, called Media Smarts. I don't know if you know that one, Clay, but it has great information for parents, and it goes much more in depth about this. So Orange County Department of Ed, I would encourage you to go on that website. Also, I asked our director of, I don't know what her exact title is, Director of Technology or something at Capistrano Unified, and I asked her what resource would be good for parents on a lot of these topics we've touched on, and it's called consumermedia.com. And there's a lot on there for parents as well. There's a lot on there for kids. There's teaching videos. There's talking points for parents, how to talk to their children about these kinds of things. It's about being safe on the internet. And again, it's developmental for ages young children up to the young adult. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think so. So you're saying as a Department of Education, you have internal protocols and responses, as well as.
Yes, but anybody can go on the Orange County Department of Ed website and get all that information, or the Capistrano Unified School District website. You have to dig a little bit, but it's in there. Also, we have a family resource center housed at the district office, which you can't go into now, but it is online as well, and you can get into that, and you can see the community resources that are available. You can actually look them up.
Yeah. And so the follow-up question is, so there's no specialized organization that you can refer youth to if you feel like they're being exploited?
Well, if they're being exploited, being a psychologist, I'm going to go a little bit deeper and look at, what is happening with the individual? Why is the individual, how have they gotten to that point? What's going on with them? What are they needing? What are they missing? What are they needing? And so we're going to look at a little bit more from that standpoint. Self-esteem, craving attention, looking for love, those kinds of things. So we need to kind of start back there. If it is an immediate safety issue, absolutely you need to call your law enforcement.
I did get a situation. So to follow up, for every once in a while, just because we are a human trafficking organization, somebody will reach out to us desperately looking for some kind of direct services, which we don't provide. We are an education sort of organization. We don't provide any emergency support, but people will find us. And this is a story that happened. So a mom, and if you were with me last time, I might have shared this story, but a mom had a child who had run away, and she believed she was being trafficked, and the daughter was now back, and she didn't know what to do. And it was during the shutdown. So the parent couldn't go to work, and they couldn't leave the child alone. So it was really panicky. So the parent called the principal called the Boys and Girls Club. The Boys and Girls Club called another organization, which then called me. And then I called an organization after talking to the person that I thought could give them the services. And everybody had to do that twice, because the person didn't come home. She'd run away again. And when she came back, now it was like, all right, now she's back. And we had to go through that again. So I will say that there is a gap in understanding or knowing exactly who is out there for these kids and parents who need the help. So if that school happened to reach out to the Boys and Girls Club, there might be some other partner organizations there. So just going back to some questions. At what point do you call Child Protective Services?
At what point would a staff member call?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the question?
Yeah, at which point would a mandated reporter or a parent or whoever feel like they need to call CPS, or what would you do? What would you call?
Well, if you're part of school staff, you would be calling for instances of if you had physical evidence of abuse, if you saw that. If it was reported to you, something could just be verbally reported. You could call. If there's neglect or a welfare concern, you could call.
And what can they do when they get there?
When they get to...
Yeah, well, I would say don't have your hopes up that you're going to call and they're going to be like rushing out there. So I've called CPS many times over the last 18 years in law enforcement, working with kids. And a lot of times what you're telling them over the phone may not rise to the level where they are going to go out and do a follow-up. They may just take it as a record. Like they'll basically take a report and keep it on file, but it doesn't rise to the level. So what I would tell somebody if you're not a mandated reporter, you're not quite sure, you can call CPS, tell them what you know, and then they will take it from there. And it's kind of not on your plate anymore. And if it's, I've had CPS call me in the field and say, we got this report. We need you to go out to this location. And I basically go out there and do an investigation. And then the CPS person's sitting in the car on the street waiting for me to finish. And then they go in and talk to them. So if you have concerns and you think you should call, you can call and you can tell them what's going on, and they'll know what they need to do. But I've had people in that situation feel a bit disappointed because they didn't feel like CPS did enough.
Yeah, it's fine. So the questions are starting to come in now. So one of our participants would like to say something before I take her off mute on this law enforcement one. What role do any, if any, do law enforcement or schools in Capistrano feel organizations like Rotary can do to help? So keep that in your mind. And I'm going to let Denise Thompson talk. So I'm going to take you off mute, Denise.
Hi.
Hi there.
I work in the CSEC human trafficking arena as well in San Diego County specifically. And so we are a direct service provider that works with youth that have experienced or are at risk of commercial sexual exploitation and or human trafficking. We function as a Medi-Cal mental health support clinic and provide specialized therapy as well as victim-centered intensive case management, emphasizing around education, employment, connections coach, psychoeducation therapy groups, animal therapy, and we also function as a drop-in center at a confidential location 7 days a week between the hours of 12 to 8 and are open and providing telehealth services remotely during this time. With that being said, those were my questions about what does the school districts do? I understand that there's some internal protocols and internal services, but I wanted to see how Capistrano specifically up in the north area, being our neighbor, is referring and linking up to community organizations to get specialized services and support around youth specifically and their families. So that was my question that I put out there. But to go back to two other things that I quickly wanted to touch on was in regards to your situation, Brenda, where you had a parent that was engaging with a trafficker, was running away. If there is a risk of safety concern at that time for that minor, my advice would be to call the Human Trafficking Task Force and to get in touch with them because they can respond immediately to those kinds of situations when it poses an immediate safety threat to the minor. And then the other thing I just wanted to suggest as well is with the social work for any school personnel, anybody that is a mandated reporter. If you have suspicion or concern for a youth that you think could be possibly engaging in trafficking or has possibly or is possibly experiencing sexual exploitation, you need to make a mandated report and report that. And if there is a higher situation, which the police officer, law enforcement touched on with the family that says, hey, look, this is a high risk situation. When you call CPS, you can say that this needs immediate response. And there is a countywide CSEC response team that is put on through child welfare that will respond anywhere in the county within 90 minutes when there is that confirmed high concern, high risk situation involving a minor in San Diego County with CSEC.
Okay,
So
so let's go ahead and we can, if you want to type in for everyone the name of your its contact information for all that, since a lot to take in. Sounds like you guys are doing amazing things down there. Up here in Orange County, I do work closely with the OC task force, and they were a part of the solution when I was trying to support this family. There were some complications, but made exactly what to do a little complicated. Like all of these stories are super complicated. So, but yeah, it's not everybody knows what direct services are available in who does what, and you know, at any given time in Orange County. I know that San Diego we work closely with some of the organizations down there. There's a great coordinated efforts down there too. So let me just make sure I didn't. So thanks again for that. That's a lot of information. And go ahead, if you don't mind, Denise, typing in the chat your organization contact information. And then the last question was, excuse me, was can you think of, is there a way that Rotary or Kiwanis might be able to be helpful?
If they have an interest in being helpful, yeah, I think that'd be great. Any community service, community group that wants to be involved and lend support, I think that would be absolutely wonderful. So I'm sure there's a place for them. And like we've talked about, the coordinated effort, I think San Diego sounds amazing. Hopefully, you know, we are moving towards that in Orange County and getting better at it, because and any groups that want to help and be involved would be great.
The Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force has meetings for the public and people who want to volunteer and organizations that want to participate. So they do have that component. And so if you're especially a nonprofit and you want to help, yeah, contact them, and they have a place for you to serve if you're interested.
Yeah. So we're wrapping up the end of our time. Thank you for that. So here's some of the resources. If there are new ones that came up, I put them in the chat. But some resources. So Cyber Safety Cop, that's who we have, our wonderful guest Clay. That's him. And he also has this site called the Threat Assessment. Bark.us, that was that one app that he's talking about that was running in the background. And if you put the Cyber Safety Cop in there, you get a discount. NetSmarts and NetSmarts Teens are age-graded cyber, online safety interactive tutorials, which are good resources for parents. I found on the school district for Capistrano Unified School District, they had a whole section on how they were managing their students and their response for coronavirus. So depending on what school you're in, you might be able to, district you have, they might be able to find some, unique tools for that. And then the last thing, Common Sense Media, I think that was what you shared with me today earlier, Pam.
Right.
So resources.
Yeah, and I put another up in the chat, Media Smarts.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, gotcha. Let's see if that's it. Media Smarts. Yeah. All right. And so then just to wrap up, we're finishing up. I just want you to know, say happy birthday. We're turning 5 today.
Happy birthday.
5 is 5 years old on May 5th. Don't you think that's pretty amazing? I don't know how you could go wrong. I mean, and it's Cinco de Mayo. And somebody sent me a funny meme today that I thought was hilarious. It says, what's the irony that Cinco de Mayo falling on Taco Tuesday could be ruined by something called the coronavirus?
True.
Anyway, so it is Giving Tuesday. I'm sure Clay could use your support. We can definitely use your support. If you don't know what to get us, you can text to give. I think $5 just to help us get our network going, keep our work going. And then, or you could sign the pledge on our website. There's also, signing the pledge helps us track engagement. If you like what we're doing and you sign the pledge, that helps us show that we're on the right track. There's no commitment to that. And then that's it for today. Let's get my last slide here. Wait, I had a funny one. There it is. All right, when you go out, remember to practice safe social distancing. If you have any other questions, I will go ahead and put them in the chat. I'll reserve them, and we will answer them later on via email if that's okay. And I'm just going to leave it to Clay and Pam to wrap it up. What would you like everyone to know before we sign off and go enjoy our Taco Tuesday?
One thing I didn't say is, in the school district, any student, staff, parent coming forward with information, it's all completely confidential and will be handled very carefully.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I encourage you, go to my website, cybersafetycop.com, sign up for my newsletter. I'm shooting out emails a couple times a month about things you need to know before you need to know it, before you know you need to know it. And
You're like a fortune teller.
right. And when we're back in schools, I hope you can find my event calendar on my website. Come see me speak, and I'm very interested in meeting you and giving you the tools to be successful online with your kids.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been great to have you. And by the way, one more thing, if you want to put other topics that you'd like us to cover in the chat, we'll look at getting the right people to share the information. But again, thank you. It's been great to have you. It was really nice to speak with both of you. And thank you to all participants. And we hope to see you next time on COVID Tuesdays.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.